Today we're here to talk to you about preventative maintenance and service on a zero turn and radius mower. The first thing we're going to focus on is the engine. Now we already know that every day we should check the engine oil. Simply remove it, wipe it clean, recheck it, check your level, fill it up accordingly, put it back in, make sure it's tight. The fuel filter right here is directional, so you can barely see an arrow that tells you which way it goes, and that should be replaced about every 400 hours or once a year. This model that we're looking at today is an air-cooled engine. We advise you to change the engine oil about every 50 hours. On this particular model, it has an easy oil drain system. Simply take this tube, bring it underneath the frame, remove the drain tube right here by unscrewing it, have an oil pan, let it properly drain and dispose of it properly, reinstall the screw, put it back up here, and then refill the engine with motor oil. Refer back to your manual to see if it calls for 30 weight, 10W30 or 10W40. Fill it to the proper level. This engine also has an oil filter. How often should you change that? We usually tell people about every 100 hours. So if you're a landscape contractor, you should probably be putting about 4 or 5 oil filters on your machine per year. We also recommend that you only use original equipment manufacturer's filters while the machine is still under warranty. If you do not, generally that's going to void the warranty. The next thing we want to talk to you is about air filter. How often should we service that? Once again, it's directly related to the climate. If it's summer in the south and hot and no rain, the grass is very dry and lots of dust, we recommend that you clean the filter probably about every 7 or 10 hours. And we recommend you do that by removing this lever that comes loose. This air filter, you have to shake it out. Once it comes out, you want to tap it several times so all the dust comes out. And another good thing that we like to do at the dealership is we'll take a Sharpie and we'll put a date on it and the hours so we know how often to service it. When you put this back in, it's very important that you install it all the way so it's completely compressed inside there. And these clips a lot of times get damaged right here and they're not properly sealing the air filter. So you want to make sure when you stick this in, you lock it in place, clamp them down, and that's securely on there, and we have a good seal for the air filter. When servicing the hydraulic fluid on a ZTR, your routine maintenance should be probably every 3 months is to find the checkpoint, check the hydraulic level. If it needs some, refer back to the owner's manual and get the proper hydraulic fluid and add accordingly. How often should you service a hydraulic unit? Always refer back to the owner's manual, but as a rule of thumb, once a year or somewhere between 400 or 500 hours on the machine. And every one of these machines are going to have some form of hydraulic filter, and generally they're underneath the frame, and you have to lift the machine up to do that. So to wrap this up, checking it generally is every 3 months. Servicing it, that would be the hydraulic oil and the hydraulic filter, is going to be around 400 to 500 hours or once a year, whichever comes first. And lastly is the spark plugs. We usually tell people if you're a contractor about once a year, every 400 hours, change the spark plugs. And this should cover all of the maintenance on the engine other than cleaning. The cooling fins are right here, and they can become heavily clogged with grass. And when they do that, that would be like your car having half the radiator blocked, so it's not able to properly cool the engine. So how do you clean it? A simple air hose, or simply get a water hose, rinse it off. But if you do that, crank it up, let it run a couple of minutes and get all the water dispersed off of the engine, and that way it can properly dry and reduce the amount of rust that you have. In servicing the deck on a commercial ZTR, they vary a little bit from manufacturer, but as a rule of thumb, at the end of the day, you want to take your backpack blower and take this cover off right here. Blow this out very good, because we'll get a lot of compaction of grass, and the grass becomes wet, and that wet grass creates rust on these spindles. So try to blow that out. If you do wash it out with a water hose, be sure you crank it up engage the blades for a couple of minutes so it disperses all the water and let it dry properly. Now, some manufacturers are going to have grease fittings on these spindles, and generally, as a rule of thumb, they need to be greased about every 25 hours. And then also make sure when you're servicing it, look for any kind of tears or rips in the belts. So if it needs to be replaced, you can be proactive and go ahead and replace the belt before it goes down and you lose production. And finally, what we want to talk about is lubricating the chassis points. Every manufacturer has different grease point fittings on them, so refer back to your owner's manual. This particular manufacturer here has one that is placed right here on this caster fork. They want this to be done every 400 hours or once a year. Up here on the very front, a lot of machines have one right here. We recommend that that be greased daily. Also, you probably will find one underneath the transmission on the spindle that should be greased about every 25 hours. But once again, if you'll refer back to your owner's manual for the manufacturer that you have, it will point out and specifically tell you how many hours of operation it needs before you lubricate the chassis. That covers everything on maintenance on a ZTR.